Hello, my name is Chrissy Champagne, and you are listening to Residue, a true crime podcast dedicated to keeping you paranoid. You are listening to episode 48 of Residue, titled Johnia Berry, A Life Stolen in the Night. When two college students are stabbed in their apartment in the early morning hours of December 6, 2004, police, family, and entire community would be left baffled. Was this just a random home invasion, or was this someone that the victims knew very closely? Fight, flight, and freeze are three automatic responses to danger that help the body survive. Fight is the body's way of facing a threat aggressively, and flight is the body's way of escaping danger. Freeze is the body's way of becoming immobile or unable to react to a threat. It is December 6th, 2004, and Jason Aymami is asleep in his bed when he hears his roommate, Johnia Berry, screaming. Jason has been asleep since around 12:30 a.m. He was awoken at 4 a.m., so he's a little out of it, and he decides he's going to go into Johnia's room, see if he can help calm her down. And when he opens his bedroom door, he sees a figure standing in front of him. Jason sees what appears to be a male silhouette backing out of Johnia's room. This person turns around towards Jason, throws him down to the ground, and starts stabbing him. Jason says that he tried to grab the blade and it actually cut through his hand. But at that moment, Jason is able to jump up and he runs. He runs towards the apartment door, he unlocks it, and he runs out of the apartment building and down the street. Bloody and terrified, Jason runs all the way to a convenience store. He runs inside and yells to the clerk that he needs help. He needs someone to call 911. The clerk says that Jason told him that his roommate needed help right away. Diana Kidd, a patrol officer with the Knox County Sheriff's Department, is the first one to respond to the call. As the officer approaches the apartment building, she notices Johnia lying in the doorway. Johnia lived on the second floor, so she had fallen down a flight of stairs and had landed at the doorway, trying to get out. Johnia is covered in blood. She is still alive, but she is unable to speak. The police say that she made noises, but she couldn't say words. They immediately get her into an ambulance and get her to a hospital as soon as possible. The crime scene is one of the worst that Officer Kidd had ever seen. There is blood everywhere. The scariest part is that there were bloody handprints on every single other apartment door in that building. Johnia had tried to call for help. She was begging anyone to help her in that building by banging on everyone's door. So the police walk into an apartment building just filled with blood and desperation. Johnia fought like crazy to survive. Only minutes after arriving to the hospital in the ambulance, Johnia Berry died. Johnia was stabbed 22 times. She had wounds on her face, neck, back. She put up such a fight. She had defensive wounds on her hands. The murder weapon was found behind a bedroom door, and there was a fingerprint on the blade of the knife. And that knife was bent. 21-year-old Johnia Berry was a beautiful, smart, and giving young lady. She was completely loving And her parents say that she was mature for her age. She was level-headed and she loved life. What she loved the most was kids, and Johnia had been pursuing a master's degree in child psychology at the time of her death. At the young age of 21, Johnia had already graduated college with 2 degrees, and she did this in only 3.5 years. She then became the youngest girl ever accepted into the law school in Michigan, but she didn't like law school. Johnia had worked so hard to get to this point, but she decided that she wanted to follow her heart and she wanted to work with children. She went back to Knoxville, Tennessee, and this is where she pursues her master's degree. She also gets engaged to her best friend and college sweetheart. His name was Jason White. Her boyfriend Jason was still in Michigan attending college, so Johnia and Jason were having a long-distance relationship at the time of her death. Johnia ended up living with Jason Aymami. I know, there's 2 Jasons in this story. So she met Jason Aymami through a friend who used to date him. Jason Aymami had an extra bedroom in his apartment, so Johnia moved in. Johnia would usually spend her nights after class and after work just talking to her boyfriend Jason White on the phone. The 2 would talk for hours, usually until they fell asleep. In fact, the night that Johnia was murdered, she was talking to Jason on the phone before she went to bed. She was also wrapping Christmas gifts for children in need. She was going to donate these gifts to children who weren't able to have a Christmas. This is the kind of person that Johnia was. Police now had to call Johnia's parents, Mike and Joan Berry. Mike and Joan wake to the phone call telling them that their daughter has been killed. They immediately get on the road to drive to Knoxville, Tennessee to find out what happened to their baby girl. Joan Berry says that she prayed the entire car ride that maybe this wasn't Johnia. Maybe it was someone else. She said that as they drove down the highway, it was pouring rain, and she just felt like the heavens had opened up and they were crying for her baby. The next day, Jason Aymami is released from the hospital, and the police are going to bring him in right away for questioning. They believe that he is definitely the suspect in this case. So they bring Jason in to the interrogation room. He is still covered in bandages from all of his cuts and wounds, but the police say that his wounds look very superficial to them. One of the biggest issues with the detectives was the fact that Jason Aymami didn't seem to have a lot of deep wounds. He didn't seem to have the same amount of stab wounds that Johnia had. The police thought this had to be a crime of passion or an emotionally charged crime. One of the first questions that police are going to ask Jason Aymami in the interrogation room is, "Did you have any chemistry with Johnia?" And he says, no, we were always friends. We met in college. I dated one of her friends. That is where it ends. I had an empty room and she needed one. Some of the evidence taken from the crime scene included drops of blood that led out the back door. They noticed that there were no signs of forced entry, and Jason Aymami says that the one thing he does remember about that night is that when he got to the door, he remembers that he had to unlock it to get out. The police also found a tiny bit of cardboard in Jason Aymami's room, and on that cardboard was a bloody shoe print. Police also found CDs and a baseball hat inside of Johnia's room. These items didn't belong to either Jason or Johnia. The police are very suspicious of Jason's wounds, especially the wound on his hand. It was on his ring finger. It was a really, really deep wound. And Jason tells the detectives that this was because he tried to grab the knife. But the detectives are like, no, this is like murder 101. You obviously stabbed yourself to make it look like you also put up a fight. Jason Aymami gives the police the theory that maybe the back door was left open. Because if he had to unlock the front door, maybe Johnia left the sliding glass door on their back deck open because it was trash night. She had put the trash out, and it is quite possible that she forgot to lock the door. The police tell this theory to Johnia's parents, and they shoot that theory down. Like, Johnia's like me. I'm going to check every single lock 4 times before I go to bed. I'm going to turn on my Simply Safe. So they're not believing this theory that Jason is coming up with, that some suspicious man just snuck into their house to stab them. But police did find someone's blood on that back door, and that blood was not Jason's, and it was not Johnia's. Police are also going to investigate Jason White, Johnia's fiancé. They find out that they were on the phone together. So there are phone records proving that those two were talking on the phone. He's in Michigan, she's in Knoxville. They even try to do a little theory that maybe he went on a midnight run to Knoxville, killed Johnia, hurt Jason, and then drove all the way home. But in the end, Jason White is cleared. He did not do this. So all suspicion at this point is lying on Jason Aymami, the roommate, and the whole community is believing that Jason Aymami did this. Johnia's parents say that at her funeral, Jason Aymami showed up to the funeral, but he acted very nonchalant. In an episode of the series Sleeping with Death, Season 1, Episode 1, psychologist Stacy Kaiser talks about the fact that people who have been through traumatic experiences tend to shut down. And if Jason Aymami is telling the truth, he has also been through a very traumatic experience. So it isn't that strange to think that he could have just been very quiet at the funeral because he doesn't know how to process what happened. This could have also been his funeral. Or he killed Johnia. The police, the family, and most of the community are leaning towards the fact that this was done by Jason Aymami. On December 9th, 2004, the police actually take Jason Aymami through the crime scene, and they have him do a walkthrough explaining what exactly happened to him that night. And the detectives say that Jason is not emotional at all. A sketch artist is also going to be brought in, and Jason is going to give him his account of what this man looked like. This photo, this drawing is now everywhere in town. Not only are the news stations just blasting this photo across your TV every day, but Johnia's family gets a billboard and has this billboard up on the side of the highway. And this billboard is offering a $70,000 reward if you can tell the police who this person is. Meanwhile, police are still waiting on the DNA results of the blood that was found on the back deck of the apartment. While waiting, the police are going to give Jason Aymami a polygraph test on January 10th, 2005. They find no deception, but the police are still suspecting him. It is now the spring of 2005, and police have no answers. They have no leads. They have no motive. So, until detectives get results from this DNA test, they're out of luck. Johnia Berry's case is going to go cold. Detectives finally get the results from the DNA test of the blood that they found on the back porch of the apartment. Jason Aymami's DNA, Johnia's DNA, and unknown DNA. So who is this third person? Well, Jason is now cleared. That is for sure. Police start running this unknown DNA through the National Database of Criminals, and they find nothing. The case is still cold. It has been nearly 3 years since Johnia was murdered. There were tons of suspects that were reported. The police followed up on every single one of those tips. Joan Berry would drive to Knoxville on her days off and hang posters in parking lots, in apartment complexes. She would hang posters anywhere she could. She called news stations. She kept the story alive, and she kept the story in the media. She even got a grocery chain to put Johnia's picture on the side of their trucks so that while the trucks were traveling all across the country, people all across our country could see Johnia's picture. And guess what? It worked. Somebody driving that highway saw that billboard with that composite sketch on it, and they said, "Oh my God, that's my friend." Oh my God, we love a mother who does not give up. All the years waiting, all the work put into trying to find their daughter's killer, it seems like it might be paying off right now. The tip comes into the sheriff's office. This caller says that they know who the person is in the picture, and that person's name is Taylor Olson. Who the hell is Taylor Olson? Well, Taylor Olson was a guy in his early 20s. He came from a family that had money. His mom and dad lived in Knoxville. Taylor had been involved in many local crimes. Taylor Olson didn't show up when police ran that DNA sample through the criminal database. So they are going to arrest him on an outstanding warrant that he has for a probation crime. Police arrest him and he is hiding in his basement. And let me tell you, this boy is not going to give himself up. He says he didn't do it. He doesn't know anything. He thinks this is a joke. He asked the police if they're joking with him. Police arrest Taylor and then they take him down to the police station. They get his DNA sampled and they put him in jail. And you know what? They just move on to the next tip. So they send his DNA sample to the state lab to be processed. But this state lab was so backlogged, they didn't know how long they were going to have to wait to find out if this is the man who murdered Johnia Berry. But it does not take long until police get that phone call that says, "We have a DNA hit." Taylor Olson is a match for the DNA found inside of Johnia Berry's apartment. Over and over, they have Taylor in the interrogation room, and every single time he says, "It's not me, I wasn't there, I don't know," over and over, until Detective Brad Hall gets pissed. He walks in on an interview one day and he's just like, "Fucking tell me what you did, Taylor." Taylor finally admits that he and a friend were in that apartment complex that night and they were just trying to steal a car. According to KnoxNews.com, Taylor Olson told the detectives that he and his friend Noah Cox had been drinking beer that they stole that night. They were smoking marijuana and breaking into cars. He said that they split up and it was raining pretty hard. Taylor decided that he was going to wander around the back porches looking for an open apartment door and hoping that he could steal some keys. Taylor was quoted as saying that he was stumbling into an apartment by the light of his cell phone and he accidentally woke someone up. He says, "It was so dark, I was looking for some keys and then someone said, 'Who are you and what are you doing?' or something like that. Then I heard like a yell and I just felt a pain. I just freaked out. I didn't see a face or anything. I got the knife away and it didn't seem like I stabbed anybody. It seemed like a fight or something. And then I just ran." Detective Brad Hall immediately asks him, "Somebody else wasn't there with you? Because I just want to make sure that this was you and just you." Taylor just replies, "No one. No one was with me." Taylor Olson is in prison awaiting his trial, and it is March 24th, 2008 when Joan Berry gets a phone call. She is told that 5 months from the trial, they won't be having a trial because Taylor Olson hung himself in his jail cell. Taylor Olson left letters in his jail cell accusing his friend Noah Cox of being the one who killed Johnia Berry. Taylor wrote, "Noah heard the rumble and ran into that apartment to help me. I ran out the back and just ran. He killed that girl." But a Knox County Assistant District Attorney General Kevin Allen said that this would have been very difficult because if Noah Cox ever set foot in Johnia's apartment, he didn't leave one trace of evidence. No fingerprints, no blood, no hair, no DNA. He says there is nothing that exists concrete that would place anyone other than Taylor Olson and the victims at the crime scene. Joan Berry says that she holds no doubts about Taylor Olson's guilt. She says, "I definitely think the person responsible for Johnia's death is Taylor Olson." Jason Aymami ended up moving away from Knoxville, Tennessee. And Mike and Joan Berry ended up finding a purpose. They created the Johnia Berry Act, and this was an act that would change the DNA laws in Tennessee. If Taylor Olson was a criminal, then he should have already had his DNA in the system. So when the police first entered that DNA sample, he should have popped up, and this should have been solved way sooner. This act would allow a DNA profile to be taken from any violent criminal when they are arrested. The Berries created JoniaBerry.org, and on that page you can read about why we need to collect DNA. I'm going to read to you a paragraph from their page. Studies show there is a 40% chance that burglaries and other nonviolent crimes are being committed by someone who has already committed violent crimes, perhaps even murder. If they haven't, there is an 80% chance that they eventually will commit a violent crime. That means 40% of these nonviolent crime scenes could have evidence that would lead us to a match with evidence from a serious assault, rape, or murder. It is important that our laws allow us to collect DNA from all felony arrests. We need to use this to our advantage and start balancing the scales of justice. We know nothing can ever bring Johnia back. No law can ever change that. In the end, Johnia is gone and our hearts are forever broken. No words can express the pain we live with. On May 9th, 2007, the Johnia Berry Act 2007 was passed. The new law states that a person is arrested for a violent crime, felony, such person shall have a biological specimen for the purpose of DNA analysis taken. Johnia Berry spent the evening before her murder wrapping gifts for children, gifts that she bought with her own money to give to children in need. That is why Johnia's family created the Johnia Berry Toy Drive. I know you can hear the emotion in my voice when I say that because it just gets me so choked up in a happy way that her family created this event in her memory, in her honor. On the JoniaBerry.org page, they write that we humbly invite you to donate new unwrapped toys for needy children in and around East Tennessee, Southwest Virginia areas. There are also online donations. I will put the link to the JoniaBerry.org page in my show notes. Everyone who knew Johnia said that she was a very ambitious, vibrant person with an endless supply of kindness and generosity. And you know that she learned that from her parents, Mike and Joan Berry. And just to leave you on a happier note, those presents that Johnia was wrapping that night, her parents made sure that those gifts got to those kids. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Residue. I appreciate you all so very much. Residue is created, hosted, written, researched, and edited by me, Chrissy Champagne. If you enjoy Residue, if you could please leave a 5-star review on any of your preferred listening platforms, I will send you some stickers and a little thank you note. I have gotten a few new reviews, and whoa, thank you. I was jumping with joy. You make my day when I read stuff like that. Thank you so much. I want to send you stickers. So if you are someone that has left me a review, just take a little screenshot of it and DM me your address. I am on Instagram at Residue Podcast, TikTok, Residue Podcast, Facebook, Residue, a true crime podcast. And if you don't want to leave a review, just share. I was about to do a Cher impersonation, but I don't know how. I will see you all again next week. And as always, stay safe and stay paranoid.